Well, that's what you would think happened to this box. I have no idea what happened to this box. Zalman dropped it off and was like, hey, can you check out this case? And I was like, sure. Was somebody like eating the side of the box? They said, we don't know. So we're gonna open this up and find out if, in spite of the fact that this case has apparently been shipped to and from the depths of hell at least once, whether it is in okay shape on the inside. This is the Zalman Z11 Plus. It is an ATX mid-tower case with a front mesh cover for ultra cooling performance. It supports up to 7 system fans, supports a bottom PSU installation, and aperture for cable management. Really? I think they mean cable management holes. Black interior coating, Zalman's powerful HDD cooling solution, tool-free hard drive installation, spacious interior for installing up to 290mm or 29cm video cards, acrylic tuning side panel, I think they mean windowed side panel, supports 2 USB 3 ports, front and bottom dust filters, 2.5-inch hard drive SSD mount on the rear side of the motherboard tray, separate apertures for convenient CPU cooler installation, I think they mean a CPU cutout, and 3-in-1 bracket provided rear tube apertures for liquid cooling systems. Somebody thinks that aperture is an appropriate synonym for hole in this case. And you could make that argument, but I don't think that that's really what they meant. Okay, here we go. So we've got a hard foam. While it isn't my favorite, it is extremely thick, very robust, and the case did, by all appearances, manage to arrive in one piece. One thing came loose though. So I'm just gonna check this out here, okay? So this is just a little guy that goes in the front. Right here, that's a 3.5-inch drive cover. I think that has to be installed from the inside, so I'm not gonna try for too long at this because that will be boring for you to watch. So we'll fix that after, we'll just leave it out for now. So this is the Z11 Plus. This is actually kind of a slick looking case. It looks to have a lot of space inside. There is the smoked side panel window, so it is not a 100% clear. It is for more of a darkened, subdued look. If you do put red lighting, it looks really, really good with smoked, dark side panels like this. We also have, in terms of, okay, here, I gotta stay focused here. It's late and I'm tired, so let's just take this off. So that is protecting what appears to be a tray for storing, like, you know, screws and I don't know, like pocket chains and like SSDs that you might happen to have lying around. You could store them there. I know this isn't the first world problem, right? Where am I going to store my SSD that's lying around? Moving along, we have 2 front USB 3 ports, a reset switch, a hard drive indicator LED, 2 front USB 2.0 ports, headphone and microphone jack. And really, does this do anything? No, it doesn't. Okay. Power switch right here and a power LED under the power switch. Now, ventilation-wise, at the front, we have almost a full mesh thing going on, except where there are ventilation grills. So it's grills, or it's mesh, or it's apertures, whatever you want to call it. There is a lot of ventilation on this case. So here we can see a front 140mm fan that is a filtered fan spot, and it looks like this does come off. Give me a second here, guys. It looks like we're going to be able to take this off more easily once we get the case open, so we'll have a closer look at that, as well as their unique hard drive cooling solution, which uses these vent holes here on either side to move air actively directly over your hard drive. So the side panels are pretty run-of-the-mill steel construction with the plastic sort of aggressive car-looking venti thing going on, as well as the bulging out window that actually serves not only an aesthetic purpose but also a practical purpose, because you can install very tall CPU coolers in this case without any difficulty. At the back you see here that, okay, from the front it looks very more with fewer holes in it. And then from the back, you can see that there is ample room for airflow coming from the inside of the case to be exhausted out the back. At the back, we actually see we've got a 120mm cooling fan, 7 PCI slots, bottom-mounted power supply, and I think all of this was covered when I was checking out the specs on the box itself. However, here we are reiterating it because I need to buy time while I take off these screws. Let's take off the side panel. So here we go. That appears to be a 80 mil. That appears to be an 80 millimeter exhaust fan, which is pulling air directly from over the hard drives and then exhausting that out here. Very cool. Plugs in with a 4-pin Molex peripheral connector. Overall side panel construction is actually fairly solid. Not bad at all. All right, once we, oh, you know what? Here, I took these screws off, so I'm sure to have that fall off if I don't do something with it. Now, this one is also exhaust, so both of them are pulling air from that front intake fan and then exhausting them out the case. And this one also plugs in with a 4-pin Molex peripheral connector. And due to like this this plastic piece here, once again, it feels quite solid overall. Kind of unique design, actually. Very cool. All right, so there is the front 140 millimeter fan that I was talking about. And then here is the toolless hard drive installation mechanism. So you just use these, pull these out if you want to take out your drives. In fact, we should probably go grab a drive just so that we can show you, assuming I have one lying around, which apparently I do. So if your first world problem happens to be where to store the hard drives that you have lying around, Slick is telling me something, but I don't know what it is right now. Something about screws. Give me a minute. All right, so Slick tells me this is how I do it. I don't know if you can necessarily call this toolless, but there you go. You slide it in like that, and then this piece is pulled out in order to remove the drive. You can also, there we go, put in an additional screw for added security if you're worried about the drive coming out. However, you will lose some of the anti-vibration dampening effects of the rubber mounts if you do actually happen to do it that way. What else have we got here in terms of accessories? So it comes with an 8-pin extender. This is actually a phenomenal value add. These cost anywhere from about $5 to $10 to buy, so it comes with the case for a bottom-mounted power supply that actually isn't even in that tall of a case. So if you have a decent power supply, you just use this and then like save one of these for a rainy day. All right, we got a couple PCI back plates, including one that is set up for these USB 3 cables, which plug into the back. That's a little bit disappointing. I'd expect at some point they'll revise this case to use an internal header, but for now it isn't using one. We've also got all of our mounting screws, a couple cable ties, as well as a boatload of thumb screws that look like they would be useful for all kinds of things, including mounting drives. So these guys are threaded with fine threads, guys. So no, I don't think you're right. I don't think it's for that, Slick. I think it's for mounting the motherboard. I could be wrong though. Let's find out. Yeah, I think these are actually for mounting the motherboard. Cool, because all the standoffs are in here as well. I actually really like the look of mounting the motherboard with thumb screws. There's no reason you can't do it in any case, but as long as you have screws that are threaded correctly for your standoffs, but I think it looks really sharp. So there's a user's manual, and let's get moving with the case itself. Here we go. So in terms of the fans you can mount in this thing, you have a ton of different options. So there's the front fan, there's the 2 other fans that come with it that cool your hard drives. There's also room for up to another 2 120 or 140 millimeter exhaust fans up here in the top, a 120 in the back, a 120 or a 140 with a filter, so that's going to be an intake. On the bottom, there's your power supply fan, which is also filtered. That's good. And then finally, you can install another fan on the back of the motherboard where your video card is. So that'll actually okay, this is interesting because for video cards that use aftermarket coolers like this one, where they actually blow a lot of the heat down towards your motherboard, cooling the back of the board is something that could be very useful. I've never seen that feature before, so that's an interesting touch. What else we got here, right? All your included internal connectors, so your front power switch and LEDs and all that whatnot hoo-ha, as well as your internal USB 2 header, and then your internal USB, or rather your external USB 3 cable. So those ones are gonna go around to the back of the motherboard and plug in right there using that PCI slot pass-through. We have a fairly large CPU cutout, some pre-installed motherboard standoffs, although you'll have to put in the rest yourself. That's fine, because this is pretty much what you need for ITX. Then for MATX or ATX, you're going to go ahead and expand how many you have in there. 5¼ inch bays, I actually never did count those. We've got 5 of them, with one of them with the 3½ inch adapter that piece was missing from before. These are all filtered, so they have foam in them, which will keep dust from accumulating from air that is sucked in through the front of the case. Overall construction is actually fairly solid considering what a value this case is. They haven't cheaped out on the overall build quality of it. It feels very solid, which means it may not be as much of a factor when it's just a case, but once you load it up with a bunch of heavy hardware, especially if you're going to ship it anywhere, the cases that aren't built as well tend to show very quickly where the problems exist. So if you aren't doing things like reinforcing the motherboard tray with these kinds of bends, which incidentally also gives you a lot of different cable routing options, or that's what Zalman has incidentally given you cable routing options, as well as all these different places to tie down cables. It's those little nice touches that make a case much easier to work with and much more solid. Look at this, look at all these cable hold downs. These are more handy than you'd think because there isn't a ton of room on the back of this motherboard tray for cable routing. So being able to lay everything down flat and cable manage it cleanly is going to be the difference between a tidy case with all the cables running up the back and an awful looking cable managed case with the cables running up the front. I think that pretty much covers it, so thank you for checking out my unboxing and first look at the Zalman Z11 Plus. Don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips for more unboxings, reviews, and other computer videos. Slick burned me. That's the SSD mount on the back of the motherboard tray. That is not for a fan, although, you know, you could put a hole in the other side panel and you could put a fan there if you really wanted to. If you wanted to execute my well-intentioned plan of cooling the motherboard near the PCI slots better, you could do that. Or you could just install your SSD here and run your cable around here to your motherboard and it would look very tidy and clean, and that would be a good thing.